drone campaign is slowly emerging into the open. Today, a new revelation from the American media that drones like these have been operating for years out of a secret base in Saudi Arabia. Their target is members of this group, Al-Qaeda, in the Arabian Peninsula, based in neighbouring Yemen, and which Saudi Arabia has long been working with the US to fight, partly because many of its members come from Saudi. The pace of drone strikes against the group has been growing rapidly in recent years. American officials said the first time the CIA used the Saudi base was to kill this man, Anwar al-Awlaki, in September 2011. That killing remains controversial since al-Awlaki was a US citizen. Supporters say strikes like this have seriously damaged al-Qaeda's ability to plan attacks. But critics say they're of questionable legality and that they cause too many civilian casualties and alienate local populations. Tomorrow, John Brennan will have to answer questions before Congress in his confirmation hearing for CIA director. The legality and effectiveness of drone strikes is likely to be high on the agenda, especially after a memo was leaked outlining the legal arguments in favor of strikes. Yesterday, the White House defended the policy.
We have acknowledged, the United States, that sometimes we use remotely piloted aircraft to conduct targeted strikes against specific al-Qaeda terrorists in order to prevent attacks on the United States and to save American lives. We conduct those strikes because they are necessary to mitigate ongoing actual threats, to stop plots, prevent future attacks, and again, save American lives. These strikes are legal, they are ethical, and they are wise.
The revelation that there's been a secret base in Saudi Arabia may mean some of the difficult questions about the operations of drones will be raised not just in Washington, but also in Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
January 26th, 2014. A commercial imaging satellite orbiting over Saudi Arabia captures an image of what appears to be a brand new airport, hidden out in the desert.
If you look at an image from a year before, there's nothing there. It's like an airport that's come out of nowhere.
Stranger still, if this is an airport, where are all the aircraft? The mysterious
cleric Anwar al-Awlaki was born in the US and killed in a drone strike in Yemen in 2011. A leaked 16-page memo lays out the legal case for that. It says a target must pose an imminent threat, but calls for a broader definition of imminence. This, it has, does not require the United States to have clear evidence that a specific attack will take place in the immediate future.
The attack could have an impact on energy prices, as the plants are some of the world's largest producers of fuel. The rebels in Yemen claimed responsibility for the strikes. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Iran was behind them. A commander from the Iranian Revolutionary Guard responded to the accusation Sunday. He said U.S. bases and aircraft carriers in the region are within striking distance of Iranian missiles. Nicole Killian has more from the White House. Nicole, the Saudi Interior Ministry says it is investigating the strikes. Why is Secretary Pompeo so quick to blame Iran?
Well, look, the administration continues to stand by Secretary Pompeo's statement. We saw Counselor Kellyanne Conway out on some of the Sunday shows.
I'm curious, have you ever Googled anybody? Do you use Google?
Occasionally. And one of the things I've used on the Google is to pull up maps. It's very interesting to see. I forgot the name of the program, but where you get the satellite and you can, like I kind of like to look at the ranch on Google to remind me of where I want to be sometimes.
Al-Qaeda. How can you possibly explain that apparent contradiction? The Attorney General tried, but didn't.
Some of these things are fact-based, and I can't necessarily get into the weeds or kind of parse these things. You can't, I think, examine these terms without having a reference to the facts. And I'm not in a position in this environment in a classified environment, I can get more specific. But I'm confident that the definitions that we have used and the explanations that, for instance, that I used in my Northwestern speech are accurate representations of the drivers.
Basically, he was confirming exactly what the administration has been saying since the beginning. Basically, it's classified. Trust us.
Last week, the United Nations announced a major investigation into drone strikes. Led by the UN's Special Rapporteur on Counterterrorism and Human Rights, the study will examine the extent of civilian casualties and the wider consequences of an expanding global drone war. It's estimated that of the more than 3,000 people killed in US drone strikes in Pakistan, Yemen and Somalia, 500 were civilians. Joining me to discuss
January 26, 2014. A commercial imaging satellite orbiting over Saudi Arabia captures an image of what appears to be a brand new airport, hidden out in the desert.
If you look at an image from a year before, there's nothing there. It's like an airport that's come out of nowhere.
Stranger still, if this is an airport, where are all the aircraft? The mysterious
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo blaming Iran for the attacks, and President Trump now saying the U.S. is ready to respond, tweeting that the U.S. is, quote, locked and loaded pending verification of the culprit of the attacks here and under what terms we would proceed. So President, of course, making this statement on Twitter.
This putting pressure, of course, on a global macro environment that is already seeing some slowdowns in the manufacturing sector, also seeing some pressure on Saudi Aramco as well, the state-run oil giant, which is considering delaying its IPO in the wake of these weekend drone strikes, and that is according to the Wall Street Journal, obviously a hugely high-profile IPO for the globe, really.
Yeah, that's right. We had been learning that the plans had been to split up the IPO on starting with the one locally there in Riyadh and then maybe going over to London, maybe even to Tokyo. All of this, of course, pending on how this current situation
I'm curious, have you ever Googled anybody? Do you use Google?
Occasionally. And one of the things I've used on the Google is to pull up maps. It's very interesting to see. I forgot the name of the program, but where you get the satellite and you can, I kind of like to look at the ranch on Google to remind me of where I want to be sometimes.